toward to the cloud. Good. So I have a backup one going as well. Okay, so everyone had a good month. Bought lots of stuff at Amazon sale days and whatever.
I haven't bought much of lately, and that includes that Amazon Prime Day. But I got 8 cats needing adoption.
Are you fostering them, or did you
Yeah,
just acquire these?
I'm fostering them as foster caretaker
Mm-hmm.
in their owner's house
Oh,
until
this is the one that's down the block from you.
right across the street.
Okay, all right.
And I've got pictures of, well, it started off with 5. That's the only ones I knew because I even went with the person to a vet with them. And
Mm-hmm.
then it grew all the way to 8. And number 8 only showed up last week. Hadn't seen it for 2 months solid. And another one is always hiding from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get that one coaxed. But next Tuesday we take 4 in for shots. I'm hoping shortly after that we get another appointment for 4, which includes my 2 plus 2
Mm-hmm.
others of
Wow.
hers. That
Mm-hmm.
leaves 2 that might have to be trapped. I don't want to, but I may have to.
Yeah, 2 of them are now. These were all feral or mostly feral.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's the way the person handled the cats. Didn't really understand cats. Was hurt at times,
Mm-hmm.
yelling at the cats for doing their normal thing,
Right.
and some of the cats don't get along with each other.
Wow. I have iPhone trying to come in again. Should I admit them and tell them they can use *6 to unmute?
Give it a shot. Otherwise, they'll be knocked off.
Right.
They're connecting to the audio now.
Okay.
I would imagine they were trying to figure it out technically.
Okay.
I hope
Hopefully.
so.
Hello,
Okay.
iPhone.
Now we can ask them to unmute.
Yeah, if you can unmute either with the button on your Zoom app or *6 will toggle your mute and unmute
On the iPhone.
on the iPhone, on any phone. If you call with a phone connection, *6 should mute and unmute. We're still going to need some information from you, iPhone. If
Repeat.
you're unable to figure out how to unmute and mute your phone, you can call me at 847-571-1170 so I can record your information.
Hmm.
And they dropped off. Either they still couldn't figure out how to do it, or I have somebody else trying to do something. Maybe I'm going to get a call now, right? We'll see. Yeah. Anyhow, that's sitting here in case it does. So I was able to purchase my first Amazon Fire tablet. I needed a replacement for my Nook that had died and to read some of my collections of books. Unfortunately, I probably didn't do as much homework on it as I thought I was going to need to do. I figured, okay, Fire tablet's got to be like a big Kindle, right? Okay, maybe a little bit nicer color screen. And the price was dipped down, and we have the 630 number coming in. Okay, 630-267-2436. If you would like to unmute, you can use *6 to toggle mute, unmute. And then you can identify.
Hello,
Hello,
Hello?
who is this? Yeah,
Carl Wallen.
Carl. Okay. You weren't trying to come in on an iPhone too, were you?
I've been trying for 20 minutes.
All right. Well, we didn't know who you were on the 630 number, and I wasn't sure if that was you on the iPhone or not.
Not an iPhone, no.
Okay. All right. Well, you're here, and you can use *6 to mute and unmute. So if you want to raise your
Thank you.
hand, *9 raises your hand and toggles your hand down again.
R9. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Carl Wallen. Okay. Got that.
Okay, so we got somebody in.
Yes, we did.
Well, it's like being at the dentist, getting teeth pulled with no anesthetic or Novocaine.
I used to have a dentist who would drill small cavities that way.
I used to have most of my cavities drilled that way. In many cases, I would prefer no Novocaine so I could feel the bite after they were done, because with Novocaine, it's
Yeah.
the highest thing in my mouth.
Yeah, it does tend to stay a little swollen. But anyway,
I've had them drill through nerves, and being able to handle it. But
Not me.
but if I have to get X-rays, then I got to get numbed up. Otherwise, my gag reflex takes over. So
Huh.
yeah,
interesting. I'm
I've
okay
had
with
a
that.
tooth filled, no Novocaine, and then he wanted to take a picture of it, and I had to use Novocaine to take the picture.
Anyway, getting back to computers and
Yes.
technology.
So I bought this Fire tablet, and I'm thinking, how do I get my files over to it? Kindle wants you to email to a special address, and then I'm thinking, well, I've gotten all these files from a vast number of sources, some public domain, some from torrents, some from other places. I wonder what it's going to do with that. And then I said, well, I've sort of standardized on a lot of my own files to be EPUB format. Well, guess what? Kindle doesn't really like EPUB. In fact, it sort of will tolerate MOBI, which is the original Amazon format, but then it wants to convert those to, I think it's an AZ3W or something like that, which is an Amazon proprietary format. And I figured, well, AZ3W doesn't do me any good, because if I have to move off of Fire to something else, I can't read it. At least Calibrate can read a lot of those formats. But I'm trying to figure out, okay, now I got to get an alternative reader for this. So I found one, and it's like called a Moon Reader, I think is what it's called, Moon Plus. And it's got its own little nuances as well. Yeah, Moon Plus Reader. Unfortunately, I can't find the Pro version that might exist in the Amazon Play library, so to speak. So it's not available. The Pro version isn't available. I don't know why, but and I'm not ready to root this thing, but I have been able to use it after a fashion, and I was able to bring in my a lot of my books that I have. I had like about 150 some odd EPUBs and such. A lot of it was old classic sci-fi, things like that are, almost older than copyright. So they're no longer, they're in the public domain now. For the most part, you can download them with it. Like all the John Carters that Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote. So yes, I've been able to categorize them into a type of shelf. Okay. But the problem is it wants to sort the shelf by something, not so I either got to rename them all. So to keep the books in the right order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I have to rename them all and then keep them that on the shelf that way. Or I got to find some other method of doing it. So I haven't figured that part out yet. I have been able to open the books up, and they seem to read fine after I've modified some of the options on the reader. Smooth scrolling is not the best when you want to come back to something, or you need to look at the, you got to find out where the control portion is on the screen. So I want the control so I can exit this thing, and then it'll save my bookmark. I don't want to page down 3 times and then exit because I'm on the wrong page. So experimentation.
Yeah.
Played a little bit with that. Some of my experiences with my Blink camera trying to record to a local USB, and some of those frustrations. It had worked fine for months, and then it just started giving me these random errors. I think something got updated along the way, and it's not quite compatible with what they expect. But then I also discovered some other things on how to hack your sync module. So that may be another opportunity. I have an extra sync module or 2 lying around that I can try and do some stuff with. And one of the things is it's got a 3-pin connector on it, 3-pin bird connector inside. And if you have a TTL serial port that you can plug into it, you'll be able to basically access some of the command structure and command line. So it's running a type of Linux. I think it's like got a 4 gigabyte address space. I'm not sure how much RAM is on it, if it's 1 or 4 or somewhere's in between there. But that's what it is. It's a little baby Linux box that has a USB port, has power, and then it communicates to some cameras, and it communicates both with Wi-Fi and then some other RF mechanism to talk to the cameras. And I'm not sure if it's like a Bluetooth low energy. I need to go and find the FCC specs on it. Go look it up on the FCC repository and see what it knows about it. Be able to say, well, does it use 900 megahertz? Does it use something special? Who knows what it uses? Could even use Zigbee for all I know. All I know, it's got to be fast enough to talk to certain cameras. Now, the Blink Minis, they talk via Wi-Fi, but the doorbell wants to talk through the sync module to get to Wi-Fi. So that's different, and I think the other classic Blink cameras will normally talk through they do also use the sync module to communicate, but I'm not sure if they send all of their information through the sync module. The battery operated external cameras probably have their own signaling, so they don't have to use Wi-Fi, and it doesn't use as much battery. Call in user 1. Okay, let's see what this person is.
Tony Edwards.
Pardon?
This is Tony Edwards.
Tony Edwards, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
All
On my
right.
iPhone, I've never been trapped like this.
Oh, that was you on the iPhone? Okay, we couldn't.
Yep, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, we're trying to make sure we identify all the members of the meeting, so we're doing our due
Appreciate
diligence.
Absolutely.
We know who you are now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So like I said, haven't put the external, formerly like the battery cameras. I have a number of those that I'm going to deploy, but I've decided not to use batteries on them. I'm going to plug in a 25-foot USB, and then I can basically don't have to worry about batteries expiring in the middle of the winter or something like that, because I'm having to cover something with a little bit more action in it. I know there's a couple of areas that I would prefer to have more visibility of with cameras, and I've strategically figured out where they're going to be, how I'm going to run the 25-foot USB cord to them, and then position them in the right place. It still be nice to record to USB off of the sync module, but unfortunately it keeps on giving me these errors that said failed to make a copy of the Blink tips for backup. And it really doesn't have too much explanation as to why it wants to do that. But I've done some experimentation, and I have a plan for where I want to go from there on other methods to do this. Now, why would I want to worry about, if everything is available in the app, why would I even experiment with this? The app is kind of crude in respect to downloading the clips it stores in the cloud. currently there isn't any web interface that you can use to access your clips in the cloud. It only accesses through an app either on Android or on Alexa or on your Fire. So those. I shouldn't have talked too loud. It wants to respond to me. I used its name in vain. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Go to sleep.
Was that Alexa? Was
That
that
was-
Alexa talking to you?
Yes, it was.
You should
Even though the
send-
cover was closed and it's supposed to be asleep.
You're supposed to say Miss A for that.
Yeah, Miss A, yes. Or G person. Actually, I'd prefer to call it Jarvis, but I'm that's not an option that I know of yet. But anyhow, I have some. They don't allow web access to your clips, and if you want to download a clip, you have to go and actually get to the point where you're viewing the clip, and you have the view screen up with the video, and either you pause it or you click the download on that screen, and then it automatically downloads to your movies directory. You have no control where to put it. It just downloads it, and it's going to use its name. So you can't change anything or put it somewhere else or tell it's got to use the SD card and that kind of stuff. So I figured, well, my workaround is going to be looking at some other tools that have hacked this. But I will put that in my presentation. Then I'll show that later. But so I've been experimenting a little bit with that. I used the Prime Day to obtain some additional inside Blink cameras that I have yet to deploy. The pan and tilt looked like they were. I think I got 2 pan and tilt and an additional Blink Mini, and it was on sale for a significant discount. So that we'll try this. I currently use my Blink Mini that I got in my original setup for viewing a section of my basement where I have a number of Havahart traps set to collect the intruders that have decided to come into my basement in search of warmth and food and things like that. Normally, you would have a collection of 8 cats like Tim has to be able to take care of things like that. Not so for me. I do a catch and release. Sometimes the release isn't as the mouse expects. One time I did a release out kitty cornered from my house here on the other side of the intersection. He jumped out, got about a jump and a half, and Mr. Redtail came down and picked him right up and flew away with him.
Well, hawks need to eat too.
Hawks need to eat too, and I'm sure the alternative is when I put them outside at night and they're trying to come back, Mr. Owl is waiting on top of the house like he was night before last. You know, I could hear him waiting for somebody to move so he could swoop down and take those things out. They will actually take barn owls actually eat skunks.
Hmm.
Yeah, they can handle that. So I think, okay, you do a good thing here. How about some of these mice? Maybe you can take some of them out. I mean, the ones I've seen around here, though, we've had screech owls and great horned owls, and the great horned owls are more common. They've been in my tree around look outside, and if it's during the day, usually it's something like a Cooper's hawk, and if it's dusk or something, more than likely it could be an owl. Looks like a crow with no head. If you see a silhouette, like what's that strange bird up there? That's an owl. So yeah, that's but by taking a picture of the trap, I can look at it, and because it's done with the infrared, and the infrared is set to like high intensity, the mouse eyes will glow back as you're watching them bounce around before they go into the trap, or if they're in the trap, and I click on the microphone and I'll whistle at it, and then he looks back at wherever the camera was, and then you see the eyes glowing in the trap, yep, I got a live one. But the disadvantage of catching them alive, however, is you got to make sure you get them out of there in 24 hours or they expire, and then you're dealing with the stiff mouths. But those get eaten too. So, yeah. That's the kind of things that I've been playing with for the last month. Anybody else have any questions? This is open forum, so this is an opportunity to ask a question. If you're trying to raise a question and you're dialed in, you can use *9 to raise your hand and *9 to take it down. Otherwise, you do have if you have the Zoom window, you have an option to raise hand as well. It is done by doing something like this. That's how you raise hand, and then you can click lower hand. So did everyone come with, oh, okay, we have a raised hand. Bob.
No. Oh,
It took
the
a
other
minute
Bob.
to find it. It's not in its normal place. It's, at least on my system, it's under more.
Yeah,
So,
they moved it.
Yeah,
they moved it.
I had a challenging experience recently, more challenging than usual. Do any of you subscribe to Office 3 or Microsoft 365?
Yes. Well, I think I'm a subscription holder. Yes.
No?
Yes.
So my subscription ran out early this month, and I had the opportunity to buy it through the exchange for about $65. I support 3 users with that, so it's worth it to me to do it. But when I tried to do that, I went into my account, and the next thing I knew, I had just bought from Microsoft another edition. It took me, you can't call Microsoft and get help for that product. I went to the credit card company and they said, well, you need to talk to Microsoft first. So I finally got somebody at Microsoft to call me, and we spent an hour on the phone canceling the one I bought from them and showing me how to renew your subscription with your own key. It's tricky. I always thought you went into the account and did it, but it's better to open one of the applications like Word, and if you can find the right places, you can enter your new key.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I have Microsoft 365, but have I availed myself of all the local copies of Office on any of my machines? No, I already had licenses for those versions, so I didn't do anything about it. The reason I had subscribed was because I was over my 5 gigabytes of limit once they started lumping in all of your email attachments. And I was looking at the prospect of Outlook stopping working, and I pretty much rely on that from a lot of aspects. So I said, fine.
That'll eat up that space.
Yeah. So now I have the 100 or the terabyte per user or something like that, which I should never expire. And if I need more, I will move some more elsewhere. I mean, I also subscribe to Google One for one of the same reasons. The storage for my Google Drive was pushing the limit, and a couple of large videos get me a lot closer. So I said, well, fine, what's it going to cost me? $20 a year? Google One it is. I mean, I have other things that probably cost me a lot more in terms of subscription, cable TV notwithstanding. But yeah, so the issues with so you have to renew through one of the products is what you ended up doing, correct?
Well, you can always go to your account, your Microsoft account, but their default in that process is that you buy the new subscription from them for $110. Well, that's $100. We have 10% sales tax here, so there's another $10 to go on it. Part of the advantage of using the exchange is that they don't charge you sales tax. Any of you that are veterans can use the exchange.
Okay.
That's a military exchange.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All branches.
Okay. Well, I ended up just paying for mine outright, and I said, fine. And I'm trying to remember if they actually charged me sales tax or not. They may have. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. All I knew is that I was no longer under the threat of having Outlook stop working, and that was the important thing for me. I did notice a couple of nuances after I moved onto the Microsoft 365 storage limits. Was that some of my Outlook was a little bit squirrely for a couple days after that, and then it just sort of simmered down. And the other thing that I noticed, I started getting a much larger increase in spam email that went into my spam folders on Outlook. Before I would get one or two, maybe as many as 5 or 6 in a day. Now I'm getting 50 and 60.
Were these additional emails that you weren't even getting before, or were they emails just getting reclassified?
See, I'm not sure in that, but almost all of them started coming from things like .store domains and domains that I don't know if they were even able to, or maybe now they're able to see me somehow and know that I have a valid email address. Not sure. It's not an address that normally would show up in the "Have I been prawned?" But I know one of my email addresses will show up in there. It says, yeah, somebody knows about this in the dark web. I said, good, knock their socks off. I have a 14-digit password on that one. Let me know when you break it.
Yeah, I have credit monitoring, and once in a while they'll notify me that they found something on the dark web. It's usually just my email address showed up.
Yeah, I mean, I have some things that Google will warn me about. Oh, this password is compromised. You might not be able to get into it. It's horrible. And it's probably the stock password for getting into a laser printer at church, where you can only access it locally. There is no external access to it at all. I mean, there is a way for them to access it and pull in like the copier counts and such, but it's not a normal interface that anyone else can get to. It's not like they can VPN in.
Those are the Google alerts. Google sends out security alerts about just about nothing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about actual credit monitoring from,
Yes, I
in
know
this
what you're
case,
talking
Equifax.
Yeah.
So they're more likely to know what they're talking about. Actually, it's All Clear ID that does mine. And I get it for free because of an incident where some Wells Fargo insider got cute and entered my information, probably from the dark web, into a fintech app.
That's not good.
And they were stupid enough to provide my street address so that I got the confirmation email with the verification code. Otherwise, I would never have known until it would have shown up in my real account, if it would ever.
Yeah. I know I periodically have checked to see if I know that so many people I see on Facebook say, oh, my Facebook's been cloned or something like that. And I almost want to say, well, who can see your photos and your information? Friends, friends of friends, or everybody? If everybody can see your stuff, they can download a copy of it and they can start setting up an account that looks just like yours with your own photos.
Oh,
It's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. Beware of the backgrounds of any photos you post online where you haven't blurred the background. Details can give very big clues about very personal information.
Mm-hmm. Like somebody will know what color paint I have back here.
Yeah, in your case, that's not an issue. But for example, if you have your house in the background and the number shows, they may be able to figure out where you are.
Yeah, that could know.
That's exactly what I did with 6 of the cats that I do have the pictures of. And I didn't want the background from inside that house. So I had to do a background removal, but the AI ones that are out there, they want money. They'll give you a small snapshot, lower resolution, and it works. But when it comes to the pro version, I'll call it, they want like about $20-$30 a month. And I said, are you out of your tree? So I learned how to use GIMP on Windows.
Yeah.
And I cut out around the cat and put in my own background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
GIMP will do it easily. It just that it's not a user-friendly tool.
Right.
Coming up in the next feature upgrade for Windows 11, and I think this is only in 11, not 10, 23H2, there will be, I believe they are going to start implementing in Microsoft Paint some AI features, one
Yeah.
of which I think is background removal.
Yes, it's supposed to be, but they didn't really give us a clue. When will that be activated? Supposedly before the end of the year, but
Yeah.
that means it could be in December too, around Christmas time.
Yeah, patience. Always with Microsoft, you have to be patient.
Yeah, we're all patients, and that's
Mhm.
part of the problem.
Well, then that implies, okay, if an AI is going to work on this thing, that you are giving Microsoft or whoever full reign to upload your private photos so you can work on them with this AI tool. And what does that mean for the AI? Does that mean the AI can use this photo for anything else it wants to do?
I read the terms of service. It works with the terms of service of Microsoft Copilot. In order to use it, you would have to log in with a Microsoft account, open up Paint, and you would also be connecting with Bing AI. And Bing AI image, which is different. The AI image manipulation. That's a different little slot in their file cabinet. But anyway, it uses their supercomputer capabilities. So you must be connected through the cloud.
And
And
how long is the Microsoft Services Agreement now?
oh, it's very lengthy, probably book length now, at least
Yeah.
several chapters. But what it does mean is you need to use a different kind of login from what some of us use when we use local. And you do not need to be administrator, however.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
In which case you take your photos with you to the library and you do it on one of the library machines.
No, you just go over to the open source side,
Mhm.
and there are already some AI enhanced photo handling programs that are free and open source. GIMP is only one of these.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if programs like Krita don't eventually get AI capability. And I think Krita is one of the ones that can do background removal.
I would think that, that would be something that the power of your typical NVIDIA accelerated graphics engine could be able to do as well.
You can run local instances of AI, and it depends on how much AI is in the program as to how much processing power you need and how big a database.
Uh-huh.
So if they're not using other images or trained images or a huge database, the other possibility is, I think the way Adobe does it is they just connect up to a database that's in the cloud, but the application can run locally, although with Adobe, everything runs in the cloud anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Adobe is just obnoxious enough. I finally figured out why I had the two different versions of Adobe Reader between this machine and the other machine, both run Win 10. One of them was vastly different. It was so obnoxious with the tool panel always open. And I said, oh, uninstall the new Adobe. Boom. Ah, it's back.
Ah,
Ah,
I've been hearing in other meetings I attend, a bunch of people really complaining about Adobe Reader and what can I use as a substitute because of some change that took place this year. I don't use it. I haven't used it in 20 years or better. And now
I've used it to some extent, and on Win 10 it was easier. I had on some of my machines kept one of the fossilized Adobe 11s, and that was okay until some of the new PDF image formats started showing up. So I thought, well, gonna have to bite the bullet. Let's try the new one, the update, and I was okay with Adobe Reader DC, but then I noticed, I must have clicked on something somewheres and it said, do you want to try the new Adobe? Boom. You're like, what did it just do? Why is this user interface completely different than the other one? because I don't need a tool panel that runs the entire length of the document on the left-hand side, taking up screen real estate on a 1600 by 900 display. So I said, undo the new. And then all of a sudden, it's back to the old way. Thank you. This is what I wanted.
Well,
And then
before
they
you,
asked me, like a survey, why did you want the old version? And I gave them all the information. I said, I don't need you wasting my screen real estate for something I hardly ever use. If I'm going to use something, I'm going to use the pull down menu and then use like print or save as. Those are my two favorite ones that I use. Anything else, Adobe is going to want me to go and download one of their tools to do. If I want to do like the classic thing is I will scan to PDF on my printer because I don't have a good TIFF viewer anymore when they retired Office Picture Manager and Office Document Imaging. So I started keeping everything in PDF, but when it scans it in and it's crooked, that's one of the things that I want to straighten it up. And then I do NAPS2. That's a open source tool that lets you import PDF files, unless they came from some HP scanners, because then it says can't read the format. But if I print it out that PDF, rescan it into my brother, and then I can use NAPS2, straighten it. Like deskew, the whole, every single page, click all the pages, deskew, done, save as PDF, done. So I have other tools that I've used around Adobe to be able to fix some of those things. I wish there was a way to like make the, like I used to have an old licensed copy of Acrobat years ago where I could put in my own forms and stuff like that. That was kind of nice. But now I almost have to say, let's try and see if Word can import this PDF document and see what it looks like. And it's not usually perfect. It's usually inaccurate considering it was a PDF, but I can usually work with that and then modify it to get it to do what I need to do. But I looked around for a while to see if there's any other form building. A lot of them are online only. So you're using something online, you got to upload your document to them and they do something with it and send it back to you. And if it's a legal document, something you may not want to share with them. So, yeah. I mean, I will still tolerate the DocuSign capable documents that are required sometimes when the doctor wants you to do something, but that's what we do.
yeah, I get a lot of stuff where I have to finger sign on the cell phone.
Yeah. use my Adobe script signature. Yes, the one that says Edward Keating, and it looks just like anybody else's Edward Keating would write.
Yeah.
I should come up with my own typeface that looks like my scrawl.
Well, yeah.
Oh, you need my font. I can license it to you for $5 a use.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions or problems that people have run into in the last month that they want to raise to the rest of the group? All right, no other responses.
One problem I have, just for the heck of it, I've got two machines, one with 11 unsupported, that the current 5.16.x version of Zoom keeps doing a soft crash. But when it does it, it locks up your whole machine with a blank screen. And the only option you have is use a power button shutdown. And then when you restart it, everything looks fine. And it's only when I have Zoom going that this occurs. The other machine is a 10, and it all of a sudden in the last less than a month time, when I do a shutdown, I get STORPORT.SYS, and all attempts so far have not worked, including using a flash drive to boot the system up, go into the drive of the computer, go down to Windows Systems 32 drivers, find that file, rename it to .old, and then you go through the process of letting the system rebuild that particular file, and everything is fine for a short time. And
Well,
all,
you can't do that unless you can access the file system offline.
right.
Because if you do it while you're online, it's going to rename it right back again.
Oh, that's why you have to boot off the flash drive, like I
Yeah,
have.
boot off an alternate OS of some sort or
Right.
access the hard drive from an alternate OS. What was the name of that
Absolutely correct.
again? It was STOR.
PORT.SYS. And I've looked up a number of articles and that, and so far I haven't found anything that works. In fact, nothing that tells me exactly what the problem is.
Do you even need a storage port driver? Because unless you have a RAID adapter, you have a RAID adapter or fiber channel,
Nope.
then I don't know. Because that usually came through Microsoft Server.
I've got one. It's now, mind you, this is an old machine with a AMD Phonom 2 processor in it. 16 gigs of memory.
It might be a conflict not with storeport.sticks, but some other driver that it is manipulating because it's trying to manage other storage devices.
Well, the only time I get the message is when you're doing a shutdown and it looks like everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden you got a blue screen of death.
That driver can be associated with an SSD.
It is got an SSD in it, a 2.5 inch, and it's a Samsung.
Yes, that it's an NVMe, right?
Which one?
The SSD is an NVMe type.
No, this
Okay.
is strictly SATA.
It's SATA through an M.2, or
Nope.
through regular SATA. Okay.
It's regular SATA.
Yeah. The SSD could have a driver that's doing that, according to Microsoft Answers. Somebody did have the same thing happen, and they were asked, "Did you recently install an SSD?"
Well, this isn't recent. This SSD has been in use for on the same machine with Windows 10, probably going back to 2015.
But further down the thread, it says it's the driver. So you may want to update the driver if you can, or even update all your USB drivers.
Yeah, it could be a driver issue. It could also, I remember some other stuff that whenever you would get blue screens on shutdown, sometimes the shutdown was going too quickly for other drivers to finish up what they were supposed to do to quiesce their devices. So you had to add certain selective delays on the shutdown so that it had enough time for those drivers to finish quiescing their devices before power was removed.
Boy,
But that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I've got both of these are old machines, but the one with the zoom problem is an Intel Core 2 Quad 9550, and it had been working fine, but in the last month, since I've been on 5.16.x, that's 0, 1, and 2. All of a sudden, randomly in some Zoom meetings like we're having right now, all of a sudden the screen goes black. I still hear audio. Then eventually I lose that. It stays black, and the machine is technically dead. The keyboard shows no life. The mouse shows no life. You can't do anything but use the power button. to shut it down, wait a few seconds, start it back up, and it says, was there a problem or something?
Well, I would check a couple other things when you have it lock up like that. On another computer, can you ping his IP address? See whether or not the network is still alive or not.
That's an idea.
And sometimes if it is a locked up program trying to do something, unplugging his network interface will bring him back to sanity sometimes.
I have had crashes happen when an SSD file system got corrupted or quote dirty end quote, and it went into read-only mode.
That's interesting too.
Programs can cause that to happen in certain kinds of crashes.
Yeah, you could use an SSD analyzer to see, hey, am I having errors in this? Is this near death? Is it time to replace the SSD?
If it's an internal Samsung, the two things you do is check the file system, of course, using the full scale check, and run the Samsung Magician.
Yeah, make sure you got the right version of the Magician too, because they've upgraded that several times. And it will at least show you the current smart statistics and such, so you can know if there's anything up front right there, that'll tell you. And then you can do some additional diagnostics and have it diagnose it and said, yeah, you've written this many terabytes. That's like about 2 more than you're supposed to. It actually doesn't take too long to hit the expiration date on an SSD drive if you've used it for a lot of disk I/O. Now, the larger the disk drive, the longer that period of time is. And if you have a smaller SSD and you've filled it up more than halfway, guess what? You're going to hit that throttle a lot sooner than other people would normally. Yeah, go ahead, Carl. That wasn't Carl. That was Terry.
No.
Tony.
Tony,
Okay, I'm just.
and if it's Tony, he has to unmute. He has to unmute himself on his phone.
Yeah, do a *6 to unmute yourself. You raised your hand, call-in user. Carl, there you go.
Tony.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't ask a question. I was just dreaming. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know what happened.
You
Okay,
can lower
thank
your
you.
you can lower your hand with *9.
That worked great. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I have to keep a monitor on some of my SSD drives for that I have used and other machines for our church and our preschool, because I don't know what they've been doing, but I go there and I find like, wow, they've written that much stuff on here. That shouldn't be failing this soon. So, and I've actually gotten Samsung to replace at least one of the SSDs under the warranty period.
Yeah, the other thing about Windows is, I'm sure Tim knows about this, but by default, when you shut down Windows, it doesn't really shut down. It goes into the hibernate. And so if anything's unstable when that happens, the next time you boot up, it's going to be either more unstable or it may fix itself upon booting up again. So when you do that shutdown and start up again, it's not really a full hardware shutdown. I have had cases where Linux Mint, for example, did not recognize that the Wi-Fi had been shut down, and it thought the Wi-Fi was still configured and misconfigured, even though I had shut down from Windows or some other operating system and then booted up into Mint without hitting the machine power off switch. So not all of your hardware powers down when you power down Windows.
Let's see.
The other bad thing about Windows is when it shuts down in the default way, it will mark the file system as still active.
Yeah, so that means it's still dirty and it'll come up and want to do a fix. I wasn't sure if there was any issues on Core 2 Quad processors in hibernate mode. I mean, I would do a web search on that to see if there's anything, because that's one thing that's different. I mean, I have a machine like that too, a Core 2 Quad, but I've never tried to run any of the new stuff on it. I just said, you're an old processor. If you're running this and you're happy with it, you can continue to run it. So run an old LTS version of Linux if I want.
Well,
Or a
so
box
far,
license.
I've been able to run pretty much normal on these two machines. They've been workhorses for me.
Yeah.
I do have a new 11 machines, but I don't have everything set up on them yet to use them full time. So right now, I'm in a slow transition period because of time.
You may need to
constraints.
escalate that. Machines know when you're vulnerable.
Yeah, I know. And especially when you're occupied by really a total of 10 cats. Well, I got 2 and I got 8 more across the street.
My brother adopted a pregnant cat many years ago, and with all of his trying episodes, and he ended up keeping a lot of these animals. He was affectionately known on the train as Bobby 10 Cats. I still remind him of Bobby 10 Cats when he's talking about adopting a new animal.
I'm going to paste into chat the Microsoft Answers thread about Storyport.sys
Yeah.
and what these guys said happened to them.
All right.
Because that was a blue screen caused by Storyport.sys.
Yeah.
Seems relevant.
It's
There it is.
just been something that's been driving me up a wall, and it doesn't so far make good sound sense.
Okay, so I've posted the link to where you can find out what Microsoft Answers was discussing in that.
And he used the mini dump file to go and analyze it further, and
Yeah.
was able to look at it, which helps probably, yes.
Yeah, there's a mini dump file you can look at.
Yeah, so if it's pointing to things like that, and I'm not sure if there's any way to diagnose it beyond that to tell which driver it might have been, because it could possibly be another driver in conjunction with storyport.sys that maybe it is an SSD or maybe it's something else like a USB driver. Yeah.
That's why I suggested USB and the SSD specific drivers should both be checked to make sure that they're up to date and properly installed.
Well, usually when it comes to drivers, unlike many folks, I am very much on getting and keeping my drivers as up to date as possible. I have occasion gotten drivers that are for the same make and model machine, but different generation. So I got a futuristic version that won't work on my older version.
Yeah, that can happen. Then you have to do the rollback.
Yeah, if you can do the rollback, in some cases, you got to figure out what driver failed. So you have to hope you got a restore point that you can go back to.
Yeah.
And things like that. I mean, it's a nightmare sometimes.
Well, if you're very lucky, it happens just after you've made your last system backup.
Yeah, because there was something they're mentioning in this thread about the SATA PCIe RST premium controllers. I'm not sure if you have anything at all on your PCIe, how your SATA controller is connected.
I don't think so. Well, it doesn't ring a bell.
I mean, sometimes even though it looks like it's a motherboard item, it's actually interfaced through something like PCIe on the motherboard, just because that was an easier way to implement it, so it had its own paths to memory.
Well, I don't use PCIe, though the machine does have one port for it.
Yeah,
Right,
and
but
like I
use
said,
it.
if you have that driver that they mentioned somewhere's in your device managers, that would give you a hint. That might be one of your issues.
Yeah, just check the device manager, the storage area
Yeah.
of it, and see what you've got.
Yep.
You may have a driver in there you don't need.
Anything's possible these days.
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft Update has tried to put drivers into my system that I did not need.
Yeah, I have an issue with a Windows 11 machine that they purchased for our church. We use for Zoom. It's one of these Ryzen 5 laptops. I mean, it's not bad in terms of processor speed, but yeah, it's one of these ones that doesn't have an Ethernet connector on it. And I
Yeah.
wish it did, but it doesn't. I mean, I
Sure.
thought about getting a USB 3 to Ethernet so I could use it for some of that type of things I need to access when I want to talk to a controller or something that I have access to. But
Yeah.
it's got issues with some of the Realtek drivers that came from HP. So, and it tries to do an upgrade of the driver because of Windows 11 update, and it fails to do this in multiple times. I just haven't had enough time to take the machine, bring it home, and then start taking it apart and figuring out how do I get rid of these errors in the drivers and how do I manually update them.
And we are soon going to be deprived of one of the troubleshooters for hiding these drivers. I will have to do it through PowerShell instead.
Yeah, and so yeah, it tries to do it. Everything else downloads and updates fine. It's just that these things keep sticking in there like it wants to download them, and I think it's already on that version. So it's confusing. Like, why do you want to download the version you already got?
Yeah, that's why I was using that tool to hide
Yeah,
unwanted updates.
right.
And now I'm teaching myself how to use the PowerShell alternative.
I'm going to have to probably do that.
Yeah. Anybody who's on Windows 11, instead of using troubleshooters, you should begin learning how to do alternative ways of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because that whole framework is going to disappear, maybe in the next feature update, maybe the one after.
Right. Troubleshooters, they're trying to get rid of. I don't know about in 11, but in 12, the rumor is that they're going to get rid of legacy support as well. That means anybody with an old machine, a lot of the support features that have been in Windows all these years are going to disappear. You'll have to be on more modern hardware to make your system run.
Both hardware and software compatibility will have a narrower window. It's expensive to maintain legacy support.
It
Yeah.
is. I've always felt that they carried too much to begin with and should have been paring it down over the time, but it sounds like they're gonna any machine that doesn't run 11 at least, probably any drivers for that kind of hardware is going to be dropped.
Yeah. The other thing I saw was they were going to no longer allow some of the people that wanted to upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10 through their old license key was going to be also be denied.
Yeah,
That-
that's ending. That's ending.
Yeah, that and 8, they've already ended it in the month of September.
Fortunately, I still have a supply of Windows 10 licenses, courtesy of Microsoft. I happened to save that file down before they wanted me to change my authentication to the license service. And that became, oh, you must have your own domain. You must log in through the domain of your organization using their domain. Like, well, which you don't have one. Yes. So your domain name needed to resemble and have an email address on to be able to go further with it. But since we weren't downloading any new software, and if we do anything in the future, it'll probably be through TechSoup, and we'll just get 365 licenses that way.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're a nonprofit, that's the way you get your 365 licenses for a token amount, $10 or $30 or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, or should I start my presentation here?
You can go ahead.
Okay, let me just change this. Do the, yeah. I like the old version of Adobe. Okay. Okay, there we are. I'm trying to see if it has the new Adobe on here. No, somehow something in here had a new Adobe and old Adobe. If you have the new Adobe and you want to go back to the old format, one of these selection items down here says switch back to the old Adobe. And that's how you get back to the one that has a symbol Control H and it's gone. The toolbar is gone, and it only comes up on the right hand side then, and so on. So this is some notes that I've discovered on Blink cameras and software. I mean, there's some other items that I have in here that I didn't put in this presentation, but I've noticed, and I've put in notes in case I ever want to upgrade parts of this. There's a statement that says that if you plug in a USB drive onto the sync module, on the sync module 2, and it is unformatted, it will format it to be exFAT. However, I have tried to use an exFAT formatted flash drive, and it still refused to write anything to the drive. So I wonder if that is a red herring of some sort that they've introduced into the online documentation. So just a little bit of background on what kind of system I'm dealing with. I don't have the Blink 4 cameras. I know they're out there, but they're functionally very similar to the Blink 3 outside cameras. They both run on batteries. I think the connector might be a little different between the two of them, but other than that, they don't have any increased resolution. But I'm using a Blink doorbell camera, which connects to the Blink Sync Module 2. And the software it's running on the doorbell is 1265. It's got a very good connection because it's about 20 feet away from the sync module. The Blink Mini is located in the basement, but it's only 25 feet from the main router, and it always connects via Wi-Fi, and it doesn't necessarily go through the sync module. The minis happen to all run off of Wi-Fi because they're powered off of USB, and anything that runs off of batteries for the most part has to go through the sync module. And I think that's done to minimize the amount of power needed to maintain the connection. With Wi-Fi, a permanent Wi-Fi connection is quite that's atrocious in terms of power usage if you've ever done battery operated Wi-Fi devices. And I happen to have some experience in that area. And the sync module is currently running 16.0.7 and is only about 2 feet away from an access point running 802.11g. I have a plan that started on 8/18 and it goes for a year. I had installed it around the 3rd week of July, and there was 30 days of 3 monitoring. Unfortunately, I didn't start doing a USB backup until after I was already on the long-term plan, and it would automatically back up the clips until recently I started seeing backup clip failed. So I think something got updated along the way, and because if I look at some of my old file systems that on the other flash drives I used before this, I thought maybe there's something wrong with the flash drive. It was a 16 gig HP drive, which is probably about 8 or 9 years older. And I thought, well, maybe that's a bad flash drive. I used another one. And even a newer drive didn't really help. In fact, it may have made it worse. So, anyhow, backup clip failed. It doesn't have any real information about it, and there's no way to find out about why it failed or where it failed. The clips are only backed up once a day. Supposedly, it's supposed to back up the stuff it hadn't backed up from the previous backup, but I'm not sure on how it figures out what it thinks it needs to back up. Because I've had some backups back up more than one day worth of information if there's been failures. You have to safely eject the USB from the hub with the correct procedure. So you have to use the Blink app, and you have to go into local storage and you say unmount the USB. You can take it out. And I've taken this one out that told me it had an error, plugged the flash drive into several different Win 10 laptops and checked the format and everything. Everything is fine. Check Disk has found no errors on it. So it hasn't been an issue with the USB. The AP that's being used is actually a legacy AP that's probably going on close to 20 years old, but has not had any issues with connectivity. And if it reboots on power failures, which I get about here about every 2 months with according to Ting, it reboots fine, it comes back up and it's connected. It does not have any routing functions in it. That goes through the main router. And the main router is on a UPS, so it should continue to operate if there's been no power failures. But the clips are failing a lot more often than something with Wi-Fi. And when the clip backup is scheduled and it tries to download the clips to the USB, here's what you get. Clip backup failed for, and then your Blink system name. If going further into the Blink application, if you click on the sync module, you can see approximately when the error occurred. So you go in and you go to local backup and it says clip backup failed at this time, which happens to be the same time that it sent the notification to your devices that have the Blink app installed. So in my case, I get a notification on my Fire tablet, and I also get one on my cell phone. And it tells you it does a once daily backup generated by the eligible cameras on the system to the USB storage device, and then the camera scheduled for clip backup, and it has the full name of both cameras. So I've ejected a drive. When it empties, the storage gets updated that says it has no local storage in the app, and I plug it back in again. It updates the error message. Instead of clip backup failed at such and such a time, it says clip backup completed, when in fact it really hasn't done anything. All it does is change the message. It's not really done the backup. I took the drive that I was having a lot of problems with, and I said, fine, I've tried a number of fast formats, do a full format. So I waited about 40 minutes for this thing to do a full format on this, I think it's a 32 gig drive. And it finally finished, and I put it in there and returned it to the sync module. And today, I hadn't done any backups. I did a safe eject from the USB from the sync module, verified that nothing had been updated other than 2 directories created, Blink and Blink Backup, but there was nothing in either one of those. So I did that at about 3:45 today. Because the backup seemed overdue. I thought, well, maybe if I take it out, check it, plug it back in again, it'll force a backup. So plugged it back in again, and at 15:56, clip backup failed was noticed. So I removed the USB again, and the sync module power cycle. That's one other thing they say. If you're having problems, power cycle your sync module. I've done this a number of times already. But the Blink application is kind of dense because it hasn't not done any real-time checks to see what's the status of the sync module is, because I've actually gone into the screen and it hasn't noticed that the sync module's not there until I try and access the local storage, and it says, oh, your sync module is offline. Oh, you fooled me. So at least today on the drive, I actually had some backups from the 16th and the 17th. I didn't have anything to be saved on the 18th. And on the 19th, there's only one clip that was not saved on the flash drive. So I'm assuming it was the clip for the 19th that it failed to save, or it's giving me this error when it has nothing to back up. I'm not sure which yet, but so I returned it back to the sync module, and it noticed, it updated some of the screens that said it was inserted at 1602. So here's what the actual screens look like. I know it's a little bit of an eye chart, but when you're looking at the sync module, you can say the sync module is online, and then you click on this local storage, click right there, and then you'll see that it's connected, your clip back up, and then this is where you would see the error message if it failed, okay? And here's the 2 cameras that it is done. And you can safe eject the USB and whatever. So I've done the safe eject, and then I've also gone over to here where the sync module shows. I didn't see the sync module offline until after I had clicked the local storage first. And then after it had powered up again, then the sync module is back online, and I reinserted it, and it gave me a notification that local storage. And let me go back one. Here, yeah, it still says storage. It said storage was 1%. It hasn't changed the storage, but I know when it failed before, not on this screenshot, but the previous screenshots, I had sausage storage was still 0%. That said it hadn't written anything to the drive when it had failed before. This one hasn't changed anything, but it updates to say backup completed when in fact it hasn't really completed. It hasn't written anything else. So is there any way to download clips directly if you use the app? But it's extremely cumbersome. You have to go into each individual clips, and then on the clip display, there is a download icon, which then it just downloads it to your photo movies folder on your phone or tablet. That's it. You don't have a choice of where it's going to download. It just does this. And you have to do this for each clip you want to save. And then you got to figure out, if you want to organize these by directly, like the Blink Backup does, would be nice. At least with Blink Backup, the folders are the year and month, and then inside of that are folders for month and day, and then inside of each one of those is all the clips for that day. So I started looking around for alternatives using maybe a Blink PY API, a Python library that could be used to access the clip library. Other options include hacking the sync module, which is Linux-based. But if you want to do that, you might need to have a USB to TTL. So this is what's inside of a Sync 2 module. There's a little bird connector here, and it's got little 3 pins sticking up, and that's your transmit, receive, and ground connections. And then you would use something like PuTTY. For those of us that have done this years past, you use either the old HyperTerm and setting COM port to 115. And since you can't get HyperTerm anymore, then the next best thing is PuTTY. And PuTTY works after a fashion then too. It should be able to do this, but you need a TTL level sync serial interface. So you got to get something like one of these guys. So it plugs in on USB and has little pins out, so you can use TTL level pins to go ahead and connect up to the board that you want to look at. And then there's another one that's available. It doesn't come with the cables, unfortunately. You got to use your own bird connector, and it has its operation, so you have more than one transmit and receive on this particular one. So I started looking around for alternatives. A couple of these are interesting. These 3 GitHub ones are all linked to a thing called a Bling viewer. It adds a set of files to Chrome and allows Chrome to interface to the API and allows you to access the video interface. So if you want to get it, I have not gotten into these yet. I have not tried to download these. Some of these require Visual Studio 17 to compile and build. It's a little bit larger effort than a simple afternoon is going to take. There are places online that are in GitHub that describe the Blink Monitor protocol, if you want to get into that. And then some of the docs on there. And then there was the first one up here was a way that somebody figured out that the Blink Sync 2 modules can be compromised by injecting command flaws into their Linux operating system. Because it is basically running almost a type of Linux as well. It's probably a very limited and not full featured, but that's the host they decided to put it on. I'm kind of surprised though that Amazon was not required to post any sort of open source on the Blink cameras if they utilized Blink source or used open source to create their product. I think that's a violation of the open source guidelines, and that somebody's going to call them on the carpet on that at some point in time. And that's basically what I had. I can actually go and show you what some of these things look like. I think I'll try and see if it'll access it. Allow. And then I have to change my share to go to, I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to change the share to go to the other screen. So this is what the GitHub looks like for this particular one, the Bling viewer. And if you go into the READMEs, you actually have a pretty good idea of what it looks like if you run the Bling desktop and you're able to look at your cameras. It does have an issue with certain cameras having live views with the current version, but it allows you to download your clips and store them where you want. So that would cover some of the things. And there is using a Chrome application and adding additional, here's the path to the viewer and such. So basically, you may need to use an old version of Chrome with pre-flight capabilities. You have to, there's some warnings here about look at certain, and I'm not sure if these have been plugged yet. If in the current version of Chrome, like I said, I may need to use an older version of Chrome to even support this, and maybe on an old system, but it would be one way to access some of these things. So anyhow, that's, I will go ahead and post that to the chat. All right, let's see. I want the file, my computer. Blink cameras and software, open and send. All right, so it should be available now in the chat. I think it is. Good. All right. Show in folder. Good. It is saved. So, did anyone have any questions on my my challenge of trying to make the cameras function? I don't think, has anybody else used Blink cameras at all or something similar? I see shaking of heads. So I guess I'm the first one to blaze down this path that tried to see if the product worked as advertised. But there's, like I said, there's a number of things. There's also some differences on how Blink works with local storage if you don't have a subscription plan. Supposedly, if you don't have a subscription plan, you can only save your clips on you can only save the clips on USB drive that's plugged into your Sync Module 2. In which case, when you look at your clips, there's a couple of different options that show up on the Blink clips that indicate whether it's a cloud recording or a local storage on the USB. And if it's a local storage on the USB, it takes longer to load. I've noticed that I don't see anything show up on my my viewer from the USB, but I'm thinking of trying to copy some of these folders from the folder called Blink Backup to Blink. The Blink folder is empty on this USB drive, but I'm thinking if I put some of those other files in the Blink folder, they will show up on my clip display and be able to be downloaded. But I am not positive on that. They don't describe this at all, or anything on the format of the USB and any of the documentation that's out there. But if I get to that point, I mean, I was thinking, well, why would you create an empty folder? And the only reason I could think about is, well, what happens if you don't have a subscription? Maybe that's where it's storing its stuff. And if you do have a subscription, it stores it in another place, which would keep the two separate. That may make some sense. So I may try that and see how that works. And I mean, I've saved some of the clips that were necessary, like when people have come up to my door and banged on it in the middle of the night and saw them running away. So I mean, I've had those clips, and I've saved those in other media. But after 60 days pass, well, you can no longer get any of your cloud clips because they have expired. So they become unavailable. You know, I suppose if you had a Ring doorbell, you'd have a similar kind of problem with Google, but I'm dealing with Amazon right now. So, but fortunately, Amazon is the same company that sold me those 2 USB to TTL devices. So Amazon has enabled me to hack their own device. I mean, I've worked with serial interfaces for many years as part of my job description. In fact, sometimes when you were unable to access the telnet into a router or something, your only answer was to use the serial port on the device and access it that way, and then recover and told it to erase its configuration and come up empty, and then you could reprogram it again and get it set to be the right way, and download it from a USB drive or something like that. But typically, a lot of these systems would connect at 9600 baud or 115 kilobaud or 19.2. Sometimes they auto baud it. You had to hit the key several times, and it would wake up and said, here you are. Good. Glad to talk to you. I've had to do that on some of the old Motorola access points to recover them. Like the one that currently is sitting 2 feet away from this Blink sync module is one of these things that actually has an old serial port capable on it. Except it's an RJ45 serial port, not to be confused with a RJ45 Ethernet port. So that's what I had for today's meeting. If you guys got any other questions or any suggestions for other type of things you'd like to see. Carl, any requests?
No, thanks.
I wasn't sure if this was more up the alley of some of the other people that are starting to look at trying to do this. I think that having cameras and visibility in certain areas is probably going to become more important rather than less important with the way things happen around various neighborhoods. I mean, yes, right now we had somebody knock on the door at 20 to 11, but I think it was kids being prankful. But after I have a couple other cameras to watch the other parts of the yard, I'm not quite to the point where I'm putting up floodlights that automatically illuminate upon motion on a camera. But just wiring the Blink cameras up to AC power all the time or the USB power pack, I thought, oh, that might just help in terms of keeping track of things. And at least it keeps me from having to make a trip downstairs all the time when I want to check the mouse traps. Yes. Did I have a question there? No, I didn't. I just saw things light up there on one of the boxes. Okay, well, unless somebody has some other questions, we could end the meeting early, but if we're free to, do an additional open forum if you have any questions. Raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, well, in that case, I will then say I will close the meeting and make sure Tim's got his recording done.
What do you mean done?
Well, you had questioned whether or not it would record properly or not. This is a good
Yes, I
test.
know. I'll let you know by email.
Okay, all right. In that case, thank you very much for joining. If you have any other suggestions of things that you'd like to see, send me an email. You have my, should have my email address, edward.keating@outlook.com. And I guess I'll see you guys next month then. Hopefully I'll come up with a little longer program maybe. I'll have to go into some more detail.
Ed, do you have something on AI or like, maybe, highlights or who's doing it or, or whatever?
Not too much, but AI does whatever it wants to do.
Well, I thought
Um,
maybe you have a PowerPoint or something on AI.
I haven't created anything on AI other than I think that there has been some other presentations on AI already been presented for CCS that are older that might have still current content in it on ChatGPT and Bard. That might give you probably even a better. I mean, I've done some things with ChatGPT asking it to write my biography, and it came up with this fiction as me being a past president of CCS, which I never was. I have been associated with the society since the first president, but and even before then, when it was a different name, Northern Illinois IBM PC Users Group. But it made up some great things about me that were totally untrue. I don't think it provided any references for this. I'll have to go back and see if I can find any of that stuff and see what the current state of it is. Some things have changed a bit. I've seen that they've limited some of the responses after people have accused AIs of telling them to do things that obviously might be contrary to their programming. The one guy who was trying to shoot the Queen with a crossbow was, for example, he said that an AI told him to do that. So I kind of doubt that. I think he may believe that, but it's one of these instances that, I don't know if it can be validated or not. But supposedly he was told to do this by an AI. The other things that I've seen are sometimes the AIs can come up with a very sensitive response, like somebody like Colbert was asking through one of the AI programs, what kind of humor can you actually make out of the situation with Hamas and Israel, and it came up with a very sensitive answer why it couldn't. And he said, "I thank our future robot overlords who are still unable to determine which photos contain a traffic light."
The thing I hear is, from people is, they pray AI is going to take their job away. That seems to be like the robots. They had a presentation on an assembly line, and it was just robots from one end to the other on the assembly line. Amazing.
Well, if you have a job that does not require a lot of thinking process, okay, it's possible that some parts of your job could be turned into something that's automated. Okay. The question is whether or not the thing that's automating you is more expensive than you to implement and maintain and to monitor. Okay. Or it's less expensive, but it brings in a more dangerous work environment for the other people around it. I mean, there are a number of reasons why you don't always automate. Automation usually is helped if your process is developed such that you have little or no chance of failure because of the way if you're assembling a product, you have a fixture that you put all the pieces in, and if the pieces fit in the fixture, it automatically assembles it correctly. So it eliminates that chance of error that somebody puts in something backwards because it won't fit in the fixture. So there you've used the fixture to eliminate sources of possible error. If you're building it freehand, you can get things mixed up and you can put it in the wrong order and it may not work. And that's a source of error. It's a source of defects. Things that are built with a type of jig like that are well suited to automation, where a computer can pick up a piece, reposition it, put it in the fixture, take another piece, put it in the fixture. Now the whole thing is assembled. Now it can send it over and have it be welded. Robot welders do excellent jobs, even better than some journeyman welders can do, because they're more consistent. It's consistency that they're looking for when they automate, not necessarily cost effectiveness. If you reduce defects, I mean, if you build 10,000 cars and one of them is defective, what is your cost? Okay, it's pretty expensive to rework a car, depending on what it is. You don't want to have to buy it back and then scrap it. But if it's something that costs $1.98, okay, you've got to question, what kind of labor does it take for me to assemble this product? So yeah, can automation take over your job? Possibly, but not unless your job was pretty much meaningless to begin with.
Well, we just bought like a countertop for the kitchen, and they had a thing on arms, and it was doing all the drilling and all the on a blank or countertop, getting all of the different holes that were needed, in the countertop, and the thing was just automatically moving and precision.
Yeah, and that
it
is
was
called
amazing to watch.
That's called a CNC machine. Okay, computer numeric control. Okay, a CNC machine is a way of automating and redoing something based on a set of specifications. It had to have something measured. When they measured your countertops, did they bring in a computer and a laser?
No, it just the guy.
He took pictures.
Yeah, tape measure and
The newer ways.
Yeah,
The newer ways of doing that, they put registration stickers on various points on the old countertop or on the cabinets, and then they will take several photos, or they'll take a 360-degree photo on a camera on a special tripod, okay? And then they'll send that in, and then they can tell the CNC what to do. That means that if he just did this by measurements and it cut the holes out, it approximated where the holes were going to be. And when the guys came to install it under the wall, did they have to scribe to the wall and then take out some material on the thing when they put it against the wall?
well, they're in the process of making it now. So
Yeah.
next week they're gonna install it, I guess.
Yeah. So what they'll do is, because they only did measure by tape measure, however accurate he was, that means there's going to need to be some customization when they install it, which means they'll have to do some manual adjustments of the edge of the countertop with respect to the drywall, because the drywall is never completely straight. Okay. Drywall has dips and bows and crevices and all kinds of stuff that they have to work around. So they will scribe a line.
Watching that CNC machine work with amazing,
There are people that use CNC machines for woodworking now.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it's up on the ceiling hanging down, and I mean, the whole thing.
Depends on the size. You can have
moves
small
around,
ones.
it moves around, and the drill goes up and moves, and drill goes down, and
Now that's nice to have something like that does it all automated, but you have to have a person that goes in and changes the bit in the chuck because the bit wears out, and the machine might not recognize that the bit broke.
Oh.
So unless the machine has a monitor somehow to check to see, well, how long is the bit slipped in the chuck? Is the bit still in the right position? Does it go a test registration every once in a while? It stops what it's doing, moves itself over to the corner and tries a registration check, because that's what it'll do when it moves to the side and to the corner. It's trying to say, zero the XY coordinates here and see if my Z axis is still where it belongs.
Well, it's basic to watch.
There's, like I said, you can purchase things like this. They're still a little pricey. They're in the $3,000 to $5,000 range for somebody who wants to do some of this stuff at home. And that big thing you're describing, it probably was $25,000 or $30,000 worth of equipment, not including the computers. Okay, and the computers need to be.
Yeah, very expensive, actually, yeah.
Yeah, but they realize, what does it take a craftsman to create this? And is the craftsman's time better spent in making fine adjustments after this thing is created, and doing the stuff that the computer is incapable of doing? And then there's a quantity, it's the thing of the quantity. How many of these things can a craftsman turn out versus the computer turn out if he's got the right measurements? Key here is the measurements that go into it. And that's why, like I said, there's actually a company, and I can't remember the name of it, that uses a handheld router, and you put it on your workpiece, and it looks for a 2D barcode that's on the piece to help it register itself. And you hold it in place, and it moves the router around within this little window and builds more of the pattern. And then you can move it to the next location, and it can do some more of the pattern. So it's a partial human / CNC machine where you can move around and then have it basically route out the pattern you're trying to develop.
Yeah, and what they made, it shows what the canvas should look like. I mean, the gal has this architectural type, drawings and everything on the computer screen, and makes it a reality of what it's going to look like. I mean, just on the using the
If the guy was off by a 1/4 inch when he measured it, it's going to be off by a 1/4 inch when they bring it in.
Yeah, I forget what they call that. Mechanical, drawing, architectural stuff on the
the one that I was familiar with that could render 3D objects was done with a technology called facets. So everything was identified in that 3D drawing with a triangular shape called a facet, and it knew where it started and where it ended and what the endpoints were, and multiple facets went into creating an object. This is the same technology that was used years ago to take radar photographs from space of topography and be able to use this to figure out where to put your cell sites for coverage and what kind of estimated coverage they would have around this building or this park or this office complex. And it would be able to measure. And you could do the same thing with photographs inside, and it was basically scanned in with this facet mapping. And then you could figure out where your Wi-Fi would bounce around in the office and what kind of coverage you'd have in the inner offices. But this is technology that was almost 20 years ago.
I remember way back when there is like a desk and a big huge white sheet, and the person would have a T-square and a pencil and doing all
Yeah,
that.
that was another 30 years before that.
Yeah, now it's all done on a computer. Amazing.
I mean, the scanners that we used back over 20, let's see now, it was 25 years ago, were ones that we had and the US government had. And I don't know if anyone else has had those type of scanners, but they were a type of drum scanner that would carry an E-size blueprint, and it would scan in to create a 1/4 gigabyte image. So 256 megabyte images is what it would scan to. And I think it was like about 3,000 dots per inch. So it would take these maps and map databases, and if we didn't have the map database, we'd scan the maps in, and then it would be used to, as it was digitized, to input to the mapping software. But so you would spin 3,600 RPM and basically scan the whole thing in that way. And like I said, us and the US government were the only ones that had scanners of this resolution and capacity.
I forget what they call those drawings that they do on the computer. What do they call it? There's a. Yes.
Well, an E-size computer print, like an E-size drawing.
Yeah, I mean, when they do this stuff on a computer, the technology or
You're talking CAD CAM.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, yeah, we had we had a lot of CAD CAM programs, but we had ones that were either in specially derived to be able to use these facet technology databases to be able to plot,
Yeah.
like I said, RF parameters and such. The easy way to do a coverage plot is to do pure signal loss. Here's my source point, here's my end point. What is the signal path loss between those 2 points? Oh, then you can make a cell call. Well, what if there's a building in the way? It doesn't take into account the fact that there's a building in your way. So now it's got to look at, using ray diffractions, actually plan the path of the RF as it bounces off of this building into where you're at and goes around the building. Or it hits the edge of the building and it just diffracted around the edge of the building. So yeah, this was like 2005, 2006. Okay.
Yeah, CAD, computer aided design, yeah, CAD, that's it, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the term.
And computer aided manufacturing, CAD CAM, yes. So basically you could have things that eventually they had 3D printers, 3D printers came to pass. And also, you have your CNC routers. CNC routers have been around for a long time, okay? The original CNC machines ran on paper tape, the old 8-level paper tape. Well, not so much paper tape. They would make Mylar tape, and then the Mylar tape would run through these machines, okay? And that would control where they went. I mean, they had a limit to the resolution because you only had so many steps that you could do with 8-bit information, but they were able to do it. And then the newer versions of them, well, they have a computer interface and they're transmitting a specific format to them. And then that's what tells the CNC router how to create the image. So yeah, that's not exactly AI though. That's old technology. Now, AI would say, hold your phone up, aim your camera and pan around the room and let me look at stuff. And there'll be a couple registration marks. And then it said, okay, I'll have your countertop for you tomorrow.
I'm amazed by how the stuff, comes through a wire and with full movie or whatever,
If you have enough computing power,
covered through a wire or whatever, amazing.
if you have enough computing power, you can probably figure out any job that you need to do. Now, is AI going to take over for humans yet? Not quite. It doesn't quite have the same capacity as the human brain for making errors, but recognizing you've made an error and being able to correct it. Okay, I don't think, remember what the number they quote, Bob, for the number of connections in the human brain is somewhere's teraquads?
It's huge.
Yeah, it's an order of magnitude larger than some of the storage capacities of some of the current AI systems. So we're still an order of magnitude away, but at some point in time, it might end up being a low-grade moron, which might make it even more dangerous.
Yeah, in the human brain, you're talking about, if you want to call it a neural network with several billions of nodes.
Yes.
And many tens of billions of possible connections, except the human brain doesn't really operate like a network.
No, and it has a lot of things where that not all the connections are able to be used. I mean, if you learned that when you put this finger into the fire, you got burned and not to put it in the fire anymore, well, then you don't need to know that this finger putting into the same fire is also going to get burned. So you don't need that information. You've made an assumption on it, but you don't know for a fact, and you've not used that connection to use the other finger to burn the fire. So same thing, not putting my leg in the fire. So there's a lot of things that you can't ever use because you already figured it out one time with this thing.
Well, there's also the fact that in decision making,
Yes.
The frontal and prefrontal cortex, some of the connections have to be pruned out in order to make good decisions.
Or
And
you
that's
end
what-
up with some people that don't make good decisions, and there's a lot of them. They usually get into politics.
Yeah, that's that pruning out of the excess connections happens mostly during adolescence and young adulthood.
Yeah.
And men are slower to do it than women.
Yeah. But like I said, I think there was already a CCS presentation on artificial intelligence. You may want to review that first before I have to go and create anything else. But I'll think about it, but I don't have any other sources other than that currently, unless the current status of ChatGPT is such that it would mimic me sitting here and telling you anything you wanted to know.
Right
would
now,
be-
in one of my Massachusetts groups, we have a university level professor who teaches a course about large language models, ChatGPT, etc. And he's doing a 3-part. Each part is 90 minutes. A 3-part program currently about what this stuff is, what it can do, what its limitations are, how the guardrails were put on, and then the inner workings of it, which will be a bit technical.
Yeah.
And so that'll be a 3-part series. It will be released as videos that will be available on YouTube. So
Okay.
I can come up with URLs,
All right. So
just not right now.
yeah, after
It'll
he's
be about a
presented
month.
it, they may be available. So that might be interesting for somebody who wants to go in more.
Well, it'll be about a month.
Yeah.
And then we'll have that available. Okay. Well,
All
looks
right.
like people are leaving.
Yeah. So I guess I'll shut it down here. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And everyone have a good week and good month.
Yeah, next